You're live on YouTube.
Okay.
And recording on Zoom.
Okay. Also, just be aware that any noise that's made on the table where the computer is also gets picked up. So try not to shuffle too many papers or bang things around on the table if you could. All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody, this evening. This is Tuesday, July 21st. It's a special meeting called by the council, the Shoreham Council's meeting via telecommunications pursuant to the State of Rhode Island Executive Order Zoom access. Dial free. The meeting ID and everything has been announced on clerk base. We're having a discussion this evening. There's two items on the agenda. The first one is a discussion with the volunteer fire department regarding capital items. And the second item on the agenda is the appointment of a town constable pursuant to Rhode Island general law for the financial town meeting. That will take place after we finish our discussions with the fire department. We called this meeting so that we can have a discussion with the fire department pertaining to their concerns about capital funding and capital items in light of the upcoming financial town meeting. Joining us this evening is the town council. I also see the facilities manager, Sam Bird, is listening in. The rest of the council is here. Interim town manager, Jim Kern, is with us. And Kirk Littlefield is at the fire department with other members of the fire officers. So good evening, Kirk. Would you like to start the conversation, Kirk? Kirk?
You're freezing right now.
I am? Can you hear me?
You keep freezing and we haven't heard much of what you just said.
You haven't heard what I just said?
No, we can't. Yeah, it just keeps, the screen keeps freezing here.
I think it's the fire barn, Ken, because it's not happening. You from there too.
And the audio is messed up. Yeah, it's the whole.
Any suggestions, anyone?
This is Molly. And why don't I text Kirk and ask him to give his presentation and see how well we can hear it from here.
Okay. Thank you.
Is Kirk doing this on a, Kirk, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Martha.
Okay, you're doing this on a computer, right?
Yes, we're sitting in the police station fire barn. And there's high-speed internet here.
Huh, because I just have better, I guess one of the reasons I'm on my phone is I don't tend to have problems with the connectivity. Yeah, we can all adjourn to the fire barn.
Kirk, why don't you go ahead? We seem to be able to hear you clearly.
Okay. Just the purpose is this is to try and get the capital budget for our refit of engine 2. Question?
It's like ship to shore radio. How much you talking about?
We had put in for 200,000 for the refit of engine 2. Was the old engine 1. Which will
Thank
end
you.
up
Go ahead, Kirk.
replacing engine 3, which is 35 years old, rotting out in it.
Kirk, originally the estimate, I think, for the refit was 250,000.
It was original estimate was 250,000, but we're seeking 200,000 under that. But
Okay. Martha, did you have something?
No, that was one question. The other was, what is the timeline on it?
the engine has a build slot to be refit on September 15th. I can have Lieutenant Chris Obie address all the questions that you have for that.
Martha, did you have?
You're basically just rebuilding the engine. I don't. Is that rebuilding the truck, the engine?
I'm going to have
I
Chris Obie.
really don't. Yeah. I don't need a whole lot of detail. Just a brief synopsis of what you're doing, because it's.
Hey, Martha, it's
important,
Chris
but-
Hovey with the fire department.
Thank you very much.
We're seeking this $200,000 to refit. We call engine 2 now, which was originally engine 1 that was replaced. We got a new piece a few months back. So engine 2 needs to have a refit. We're going right from tires, brakes, from the ground up, bumper back, to get this truck refit, get it 100%, so it's reliable. And then we need to an old engine 3, it's a 1985, it's 35 years old. That's going to go away. And then this truck will have the capability of pumping, tankering, and operations also. Right now it has quite a few problems. It's not reliable. The pump is getting weak and needs to be rebuilt. So this item really needs to be done to protect our community, our people, and most, we need every piece of equipment to be 100%. If we should get a big one downtown, to be able to take care of that fire load. If it gets past us, then we'll catch it on the other side, which means the fire load is too high for us to handle, and then we'll pick it up on the other end when it starts coming down to what we can handle, and that could be 2 or 3 buildings. We have no mutual aid. I can't call second or third alarms. If we're lucky, we'll be able to fly other firefighters and people from the mainland, but at that point, we're on a defensive, and we're just trying to hold what we can. But it is very important that everything works 100%. We're just asking you to back all our firefighters working for free, volunteering. We love to do it. We will continue to do it, but you need to support us so we can do our job safely.
Chris, how long will the refit take?
Any questions?
How long will the refit take?
It's going to take probably, I'm going to say 2 to probably good 2 months, maybe into 3. I'd say about 2 months. Depends on what they get into. You know how it is when you start opening something up.
Right. Other questions from the council? Sven Reesum? Sven, you're muted.
Kirk or Chris, if you can help me for a minute, because I'm trying to think about how funds can be moved. I know there was a big discussion in addition to the engine, like you just described, Chris, about the building and the concerns regarding the building. How does that fit into your plans? And I guess there's really 2 phases of that. One is shoring up the current situation, the current building, and then 2, looking at a new building. And I'm really looking at this from a how to fund point of view. Can you help me with that balance relative to the engine?
Chris?
I think what we're trying to stay on, building is in need of repair. The front wall is definitely moving around and it has been for a while. It's a concern of ours, but our main concern tonight is the funding for this truck.
Right. The reason I mention it is, there's as I know you know, there's a difference where we can look at infrastructure funds going to capital and going to the financial town meeting, but that has to be around buildings, or it has to be around infrastructure. So it gets very technically and sort of legally technically squishy when it's about a rebuilding of a vehicle or that, you know. So I'm trying to think about ways to work within the guidelines and help out here. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay, well, if you're getting creative that way, yes, the building is in need of repair. We are in need of a new building in the very next 3 or 4 years. We've outgrown it. We want to set it up so in the future, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, this department, I believe, will become paid or partially paid and need to be manned. But
Yep.
I don't know if that helps at all.
Well, I'm just trying to come up with ideas. Thank you very much for that. But I'm trying to come up with ideas about how we can use funds to be able to help the fire department, because I think there's unanimous support about wanting to help the fire department. And so that's why I asked you. So thank you.
Okay.
Questions from the council?
Yeah, this is Martha again. I'm still on the engine.
Go ahead, Mark.
So you've got a time slot locked in. Is that's my understanding? And
Yes, I do.
And you would lose that if you didn't get in September. Is that right?
If I didn't get it in September, I don't know what the next timeline would be. It's a question I would have to ask that company, but it would certainly keep us falling backwards. We don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward, and we want to get this taken care of.
Yeah, that's been my understanding in the past, that it's not that easy to get these things lined up. Thank you.
It is, no, it's very difficult, and I've been working on this probably a year and a half. When I was speccing the new truck, I knew this was in our capital budget. It was coming up. So while speccing the new one, I was also working on the refit of this truck, knowing that it would, as soon as the new one was in, we were comfortable with it, that this would be going.
Yeah, this one was showing up.
Thank you.
This refit was showing up in the fiscal year 2021. I guess the question is whether or not, I think Sven was trying to cover two issues that have been stressed to us about how important it is. I know I stopped at the fire barn and understand how bad it was up there, Chris. I guess the question is whether or not we could try to maybe use some funding immediately from the infrastructure fund to perhaps start doing something about the building, either shore it up and or start an engineering design for the replacement. And meanwhile, have the fire department use the monies from your account immediately to get that truck on schedule to be rehabbed, and then replace those funds from fiscal year 2021, budgeted during fiscal year 2021, and replace those funds so that you have those funds to use for other things going forward. That's one possibility that comes to mind. Does anyone else have any ideas or comments? Andre, go ahead.
Thank you, Ken. I was thinking along those lines, but I'm just wondering if Jim Kern can explain, the whole capital thing and how nobody.
Andre, let me interrupt for 1 second. I'm going to step away. I do the fire truck end of it, the mechanicals and all that stuff. I want to put Mike LaFaro, our treasurer, who can take care of any questions as far as finance and so forth.
Okay.
Chris.
Anyone else has a question for me? I'll step aside for a moment.
I'm set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
All right, guys, thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Mike.
Okay, Andre, you were mentioning that Jim is going to explain how the capital budget process works.
Yeah, I was gonna ask him to fill in that information about how it worked this year.
Okay,
With how that's being spent and whatnot, and then I'm sure you'll have something to say to that. But anyway, Jim, are you here?
Can you guys hear me?
yes,
I've moved rooms, and I'm concerned that baud rate here isn't
Volume 53.
right. So, there's been a couple different things suggested here. One is to use infrastructure funds for I think somewhat ongoing building. Two things there, kind of a bracing of the front of the building, and that's something that would be done in the near term. And then potentially a conceptual design for the redesign that was just mentioned. I don't have that familiarity with the design as it might have been contemplated, but that would be something that would be eligible for infrastructure funds. As most of you will remember, I'm trying to page down to the capital budget as we represented it. As most of you will remember, there were only a couple things left. First of all, it was a rather light capital plan this year to begin with, because we were up against the limit for the Rhode Island statutory levy limit. So it was a case where we had diminished or reduced the amount of capital that coming out of the 5-year plan, and then the extraordinary decreases in or loss of revenue, both in the previous fiscal year and projected for what is now the present fiscal year. In order to make that the present fiscal year balance, we used a considerable amount of reserves. We asked our employees to do without raises for a year, and we altered the capital plan such that the only two things left in it were to finish the second part of the library building improvements, windows, and $55,000 for a technology. That was $40,000 for the windows, $55,000 for a technology effort that was reduced from 75 to 55. The others, the transfer station upgrades and the West Beach landfill slope and the Mansion Beach bathrooms, were all being funded from the infrastructure fund. I can't recall the balance of the infrastructure fund, but my recollection was on the order of $350,000. So if,
Actually, 150.
I think it was a little bit more than that. I'd have to check with Amy in terms of what would be left over from the infrastructure fund. And we also have a potential new source.
Hey, Jim. Jimmy, you still there? I think we lost them. The balance on the infrastructure fund was 155, FYI.
After all of the other line items.
Right. Right. Are you back with us, Jim?
So, Mike, just so you know, can I go?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sven.
So, Mike, just so you know, I talked to Amy, understanding the discussion around the engine. And as Amy and I talked about it earlier today, the idea was to potentially move an amount of money, a good amount of money, from infrastructure to capital, or at least propose to move that, so that one can, shore up the current building to make sure that the equipment doesn't get damaged, and then two, start engineering and start all the work for a new building, whether that's modifying current drawings that have been passed around by Maya Wilson, or starting anew. And that by its very nature can be done in infrastructure. My understanding is that it can't be, infrastructure can't be used for repairing an automobile, refitting a truck, things of that nature. So that was something that I had sort of thought about. And if there, to Ken's point earlier, if there are ways then for you to fund, the fire company, to fund the current truck rehab, and then we can talk about it in next year's budget and backfill. Maybe that's a way to get through this based on capital appropriations. Of course, all this has to go to the FTM, but my hope is the council would support this idea. Does that make sense?
Andre, go ahead, Jim.
Real quick, everything's been said in my understanding of the infrastructure fund, and it's not quite as, in terms of its, shall we say, statutory requirements as I'm used to. There's more flexibility there, but talking to Amy, there is a constraint that it be used for, I use the term bricks and mortar in modern construction. It's not just bricks and mortar, obviously, but it is restricted to buildings and similar. I don't know where I cut out there with the previous group, but and I did hear Ken say what the balance was. So just to mansion beach bathrooms and the landfill slope were the other two that we funded this year, and the catch up, if you will, or the reimbursement would come in fiscal year 22 by, I think, the way it's being contemplated.
Andre, did you want to fill in?
No, I just wanted to, no, go ahead. We're talking about infrastructure, and I think that's great. But I think what Chris wanted to focus the discussion on the fire truck. I agree with what Ken said. Perhaps maybe you guys, could use some of your reserves, which, Mike, what do your reserves sit at right now?
First, let me ask a question.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, what fiscal year are we talking about? That starts July 1st and ends June 30th. 21 or 20?
I really,
Fiscal year 21.
Okay, so
It starts June 31st.
I need clarification.
Go ahead.
Are you talking about the fiscal year that the money would be paid back to you, to the fire department?
no, the
And
current
I use that to-
fiscal year ending June 30th, 21.
Fiscal year
Is that correct?
Fiscal year 21 started on July 1st.
July 1st.
I'm losing everybody.
Oh, this is rough.
It was supposed to be due now in July.
Mike, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to understand the budget that we will present to the taxpayers on the 27th is for fiscal year ending 21. Is that correct?
It's for fiscal year, ending at the end of June 2021.
Okay. All right.
And
And
go ahead, Mike.
are you,
Go ahead, Mike.
there's a lot of background noise. You're coming in chopped up. So what you're asking is to reimburse us in 22?
We would budget, that's correct. We would budget, if the intention would be to budget that for fiscal year 22, which starts July 1st, 2021. July 1st, 2021. That would be, that for that next fiscal year, that's when we would anticipate being able to reimburse.
Okay. Just a few items.
Go ahead, Mike.
Number one, you asked how much we have in cash right now. We have, to get glasses on, it helps. We have $486,000 in cash with some of the donations coming in this year. We have a commitment to finish purchasing an oxygen generator of another $29,000, which we'll have to spend in the next week. And that oxygen generator, and I don't know why we're paying for 100% of it, but that oxygen generator is used to supply oxygen for the ambulances, individual people who have their own tanks. But why fire department is paying for it, I have no idea. Then we have a commitment of another 27,000 to purchase Life Pack 15s, which are the cardio machines for each of our ambulances. The current ones we have are no longer supported. We bought one already for $25,000. We have another 26 on the table to supply the other two, and that will be paid in the next week or two. The machines are shipped or being shipped, and that's what we have to pay. So I just want to go over just some facts, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of a misunderstanding why we have a cash balance the way we do. Most of the cash balance comes from outside donations. I've gone back outside donations. I've seen the 2015 supported 42%, 8% was from our fundraising, and our operating budget from the 58% was from. So I just want to just put that fact out there. And our operating budget, the other 58%. I also want to mention that when the town had a shortfall on the ambulance, we took some of those funds, $67,000 for the ambulance. We had all the turnout gear, which should have been in a budget somewhere for us, because the turnout gear has an expiration date. The tires on the machine have on the equipment have expiration dates, and we can't send our volunteers into a fire like we've just had a recent one with turnout gear that's expired. Our liability would be tremendous, and it would pass on to everyone else. So we spent $91,000 for turnout gear. We spent another $21,000 for Scott packs, the air packs that they have. This is all equipment that we're not getting funded from the town. So when you ask why we have cash on hand, that's it, because we couldn't create a town financial meeting and immediately get this equipment. So what do? Say, let the house burn down and next month we'll get it approved to get the equipment. The UTV we bought, the old UTV that was shared by police, fire, etc., died. The police got a new UTV. and I don't know how that was funded, and I'm not even going there. But we needed a UTV to get on the trails, to get our rescues calls. When we had the car fire up at Sandy Point just a couple of weeks ago, we needed that UTV to get firefighters out to the scene and fight this fire. We spent that money out of these cash reserves. That's $45,000 we spent for the UTV. And for those of you that don't know, all these assets that we buy are put into the town's name. So the town is the owner of the UTV, they're the owner of the engines, they're the owner of everything we buy. And we don't know. We have hose that's bad. We have all sorts of leaks in the pumps that we've been maintaining and trying to maintain operable engines that are 30, 35 years old. These are town assets. We're trying to operate this thing. And I guess really where I'm coming from is that, you know, we're starting to get to what I call a fork in the road. And here's the fork in the road. To continue to run a department and to meet all the requirements that are necessary. Tires need to be changed every 7 years on the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And to protect our volunteers because they're the ones on the front line. I'm not knocking on someone's door telling the spouse or the parents that they're dead because we had bad gear. So we're at a crossroad. I think this department, we're volunteers. We provide the service. The town needs to provide the equipment and the housing for it. And if you looked at it from, are we a going concern? Absolutely not, because the amount of money that needs to be spent over these next couple of years, the hook and ladder is 30 years old. We have problems with pumps. We have problems with everything. We are trying to patch, really, put a patch on stuff, Band-Aids. I got a few to show you, but we're trying to put Band-Aids on stuff. And I think what really needs to be done is the town council has to really sit down and look at the overall needs. And maybe you need to have a bond issue to upgrade everything and get it to speed. We are still trying to play catch up. And we're trying to elevate our firefighters. We had firefighter 1 training here. We had a person we sent to firefighter school. They came out, firefighter 1. We're upgrading that, and every upgrade that we do along those lines reduces everyone's, including the town's, insurance, fire insurance. As our rating goes up, your insurance reflects that. And, you know, we just can't, we're limited to what we can do. And something comes up, you know as well as I do, if we needed 2.5-inch hose to be replaced tomorrow because it's leaking all over, we have to go out and buy it. We can't wait. And that's what we use the reserves for, okay? The expenses that we've spent, not counting those capital items, the expenses that we have over the last 5 years, in year 2019, we spent $337,409, and the town gave us in an operating budget $180,400. So we had a shortfall. That shortfall of 157, how do you make it up? It's us knocking on doors. It's us getting donations. it's generous people that are supporting a primary function of a town. And I think we're really at a crossroads, and I would urge you to please just review the whole thing. Because if we don't get an engine, a ladder, it was in the budget, it was in the capital budget last year, and we put it in to be replaced in 5 years. Now what happens to all that other stuff? It gets pushed and pushed and pushed. And I don't want to be in a position where we're going to ask people to actually, they're risking their lives anyway. But so I'd be happy to go over any numbers you want. I put together numbers, and it's really, just think about it. 42% is what the town's contributed to our operating budget over 4 years. 58% has come from donations. It's whether it's someone saving someone's life on a cardio, and they send us a big check because they're very happy. It's our appeal letter. It's being the responsiveness to alarms and everything else. We earn that money. I want to know what other place goes out. Town department goes out and does fundraisers to support their operation.
Black Island Health Center.
I'm sorry?
Black Island Health Services.
I said town department. I didn't say community service department. I said town department.
I believe the town owns the building.
Yes, they own the building, right? But
Okay,
I put it out.
can we just,
Mike, hold on a second. Mark, go ahead.
yeah, thank you, Mike. That would be great if we could get, it sounds a really comprehensive listing that we don't normally get, and I think it's important that all of those numbers be out there and be available to us, not just during a meeting when we don't have time to write them down.
Sure.
If we could get all those, that would be fabulous. I'd like to get back to the truck. The item that Chris was talking about of being of the paramount importance, and we keep getting sidetracked from the truck. There's only one question I did have on I think it was the very first thing that you mentioned, the oxygen. Didn't you get some outside help from that?
We went out, the chief went out and asked the Mary D Fund. We did our own fundraising. This is what I'm saying. They asked the Mary D Fund.
Excuse me,
and asked the Rusa Fund to contribute. And we had some checks in from different individuals. When they sent us checks, they knew we needed to buy it, they sent us checks restricted for the use just to purchase the oxygen generator.
No, I only asked that because I wanted to be sure one of those checks came through. That was all. Because it was, I'm on the Rosa Fund, and I was sure we'd done that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure that happened.
We finally got a debit to our account in March.
Okay, that should have happened a lot sooner, but
Well, it's the mechanics.
fine, thank you. I know, we both know. Thank you. Can we talk about the truck and how we can make this happen? Because I really feel like we could be here for a very long time and go away with great long plans and still have the truck hanging fire with a slot for September 15th and nothing to do with it. And I don't want to leave here tonight with that.
Thank you. I agree. And it's something that, the money was promised. I'm reluctant to use the cash we have because we've already spent $200,000 this year. Our fiscal year is a calendar year. We've spent $200,000 since January to operate this department. And I'm just afraid with these big purchases that we're doing now, that, we're gonna be short on cash. We don't know what our fundraising is gonna bring in. We lost the steak fry. That brought in 9,600 last year. So, like you're concerned about the effect of COVID, I'm concerned about the effect of COVID on our fundraising here. So I'm really reluctant because we cannot keep coming back to the town and say we need something to fight a fire.
Jim Kern.
There's some things we need to work on in the near term, and then as Mike points out, there's a much larger long-term kind of conversation that needs to continue. But any capital plan, but not just this group, but the entire team to recognize the extent to which the town revenues were affected by the economic circumstances. I do get the sense somewhat that because of some good financial management and the availability of reserves, that people don't recognize the extent to which the revenues were negatively affected. It's an extraordinarily bad year, not just kind of a bad year. So the idea that something that was in a capital plan was promised, I would prefer to use the term planned for. And I've been through bad years in other places the last number of decades. This is an extraordinary case. And so any approach that allows you to get through the next couple of years needs to be viewed that way. The conversation I think that just preceded was a bigger conversation. This is part of that bigger conversation in terms of what's actually being funded by the town, what's being funded by fundraising. That's the conversation that needs to continue. But you're an extremist with respect to the.
I'm sorry, I missed the last few words there, Jim.
I said, all very useful long-term considerations, but I need to emphasize to the community that we are in extremis as it relates to this fiscal year that we just finished and the fiscal year we started 17 days ago. Probably clarify this again at financial town meeting. It's unusual for us to be voting this late. Obviously, it's typically May before the beginning of the fiscal year. That's a part of what's unusual in terms of the timing. But both of these years are going to be extraordinarily affected, and we need to manage our way through that. And as critical as a number of things that Mr. LaFaro spoke about are, the contribution to that management needs to come from virtually every segment of our budget. And I'll stop.
Andre, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Ken. So I see Amy's here because we had discussed, revisiting other people's budgets quarterly if our financial situation looks a lot better at the end of the summer and whatnot. So I guess I would suggest what Ken brought up in the beginning of this meeting was that is it possible for maybe to use those reserves to keep that truck in line with a commitment from the town to put you on, I don't want to say the top of a list because just having this discussion with you puts you on the top of our list and puts you, in the crosshairs of more money. But I'm also wondering if Amy could comment on that.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi.
Yes.
I'm not sure I entirely understood which question you want me to answer, Andre.
Just that we've, we said.
Would you like him to clarify? Go ahead, Amy.
No, if you could clarify, Andre, that'd be helpful.
could you explain to the fire department that, we said we're going to, obviously, if our situation with the funds gets any better, we were going to revisit other people's budgets and whatnot, and, look toward that on a quarterly basis. I just would like that, a clarification on that for these guys, for the fire.
Sure. Sure. As Jim said, this is an extraordinary set of circumstances that we're in. And I'm not sure that the magnitude has really set in for a lot of people when you talk about the town budget, because we do think we can manage through, but don't let that be mistaken for the seriousness of the situation. That said, if things happen to turn out in a more favorable light, particularly as we get through this summer, the town has made a commitment to keep particularly the Employees Association updated on the state of the town's financing and funding, because obviously the town made a significant commitment to the town employees over a 3-year program, and the employees agreed to defer that for some amount of time. And so we have agreed to keep those lines of communication very open so that everyone knows where the town is, either favorably or unfavorably, so that they can be sort of the first to know how things are shaping up, and we can revisit that commitment to those employees as quickly as possible. When you think about translating that to the conversation that we're having today, the same thing holds, I think, in that obviously the fact that this meeting is happening displays a level of commitment on the part of the town in continuing this dialogue. I will say so far, things are not looking so great. We're only 17 days into the year, but we're not seeing yet the level of revenue that would get us so far to honor any of those commitments early. As I said, it's very early and we are continuing to monitor closely. But it's going to be a stretch to get through this year, and I would be reluctant to make too many more commitments about what we may be able to do on the upside, just based on what I've seen in June and July.
Thank you, Amy. That's why I asked. I wanted to just clarify that. I appreciate your input.
Sven Reesum.
Mike, can you hear me, Mike?
Yes,
Okay. So given what everybody has said, including, everybody, and I think what you're hearing here, unfortunately, Chris had to leave because of work, but I know he would support, I believe he would support this. We want to help. We're here, right? So understand the history and understand what you just went through. So that I just want to make sure you know how serious we too take this. I just want to make sure you heard what I suggested before, and it's a way to try and tap into some funds that are outside of the normal box. My suggestion, just to repeat it for a minute, was there are two, in addition to everything Chris said about the truck and what you said about the truck, the two other issues that we've heard very clearly from the fire department has been, one, the stability of the current building, and two, getting a new building and safety for the equipment, the employees, future, et cetera. That could come out of infrastructure, turn to capital, and while we need to go to the FTM and do that, I think unanimous support of the town council, should we get that, and the fire department would lead everybody to a pretty clear objective. And my thought was that if we could do, I'm going to pick a number right now, 75,000 split how we want, but some for shoring up the current building, making sure it's safe, to engineering design, whether it's taking Wilson's designs or new designs, I don't care, but it's about brick and mortar. We could, I think I would sponsor that we could do that now. I know it doesn't do what you wanted, and we all understand the budget implications, but at least that will show the intensity and the integrity of this conversation. I think then as I'm looking forward and literally given the timing, if there's a way per Ken's comments that we can work together to try and get the truck repaired, refurbished, improved now with your funds to then back that through in 2022. Unless this is a great year, I really don't know how else to support this. I mean, support it meaning fund wise. I support it wholeheartedly in my heart, but I'm talking about with dollars. So I'm trying to figure out ways to, one, help with the buildings and infrastructure funds that we have available. And then two, make sure that to everything you said, Mike, the fire department is best able to be safe and support the community. Can you help me if you see it differently?
Well, I guess a couple of questions. What, did I hear there was 155,000 unaccounted for yet on the capital?
No,
I don't know that. I did hear that number, but I'm not sure it's, I don't know.
that's the balance in the infrastructure fund, not the capital.
That's the building.
Okay.
This is Martha again. I've asked this question before. The parameters of the infrastructure fund, how were they set up, or why were they set up, or who set them up? I can't remember. I wasn't there. I'm sorry.
Amy, could you answer that question?
Sure. Hi. Sorry. I'm going to read from the minutes of January 2015. It was set up at that point with $350,000 initially from Deepwater Winds executing their options relative to the beach landing, and assigned by the town council at that point for the purpose of creating a fund to finance the renovations and improvements to the infrastructure of the town of New Shoreham. And there was a supporting memo that I don't have handy, but renovations and improvements to the infrastructure of the town of New Shoreham is the specific language that's in the motion.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
So that was a motion by the town council, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
So couldn't we have another motion by the town council to reappropriate the use of those funds?
Amy, can you answer that?
Sure. The use of the infrastructure fund becomes an action of the voters, and so that's what we're proposing at the financial town meeting next week. Yes. So if any draw from that fund would be authorized through a budget process by the voters.
To be used for what? What are you asking them to authorize?
Consistent with other capital projects, we always specifically identify the function or the use and the amount. So you really have two different programs that are merging here. You have the use of a specific funding source, the infrastructure fund, which has parameters around it. And then you have it being used for capital items, and we have a process for that that says those dollars are specifically earmarked for particular projects. So when you talk about the building use, as is being used as an example tonight, that's a use that fits with the parameters of the infrastructure fund, and we would establish a dollar amount that would be an amendment, a proposed amendment to the capital budget.
Well, it would seem that you could, if it was created with the town council motion, it seems you can expand that motion and have the funds being able to use to refit the engine. And have the voters vote on it on the 27th. I mean, you know, it's a matter of what's critical and what's not critical. That's what it boils down to.
Well, Mike, the other thing it boils down to, as we discussed, is whether or not the department would be able to front the expense for the engine refit and cover that expense for the first, the first 6 months of 2021, with the idea being that the council, through the budget process, would arrange and try to budget for that reimbursement fiscal year 22, which starts on July 1st.
What if next year's worse than this year?
What if next year is worse than this year? Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
next year can be worse than this year, but we can plan for it. If we have enough information, if we have all the information and we know what's going on and what's needed, we can plan for it. But this year we were sort of caught by what's going on.
Well, the problem is, one, we do have some big cash needs out there right now. I mentioned them earlier. And secondly, we don't know what we're getting in here in the way of funds. Remember, our operating budget is basically, if it follows the average of 5 years, only takes care of 42% of our expenses. So,
Right.
You tell me what we're gonna get in donations when we put out our annual appeal letter in the next month, and what we will get between then and December, then I'll tell you if we can fund it. But we need the cash when equipment breaks. We need to be able to replace it immediately.
And unfortunately, that's how it's evolved over the years. That it's historically, the fire department's done its fundraising. The town has contributed funds to the department. And every year it's either level funded or funded more than the previous year. But that's how it's evolved. That's where we've come to. Obviously, that needs to change. Obviously, we need to have how it can change and how we need to go forward with it, because of the evolving nature of the equipment, the evolving nature of the department. But that's not something we're trying to solve here tonight. We're trying to talk now about this one piece of equipment, and also trying to get our foot in the door, if you will, for number one, shoring up the building, which was stressed to me how important that is. Number two, starting to plan for the next building, getting our foot in the door for that. So that's what we're trying to talk. That's what we're trying to solve tonight. I don't think we're going to solve the bigger problem of the long-term financing tonight.
Yeah, no, that would take a couple of work groups and some long-range planning is right. But we're at a big crossroads here, and I guess just something that was mentioned earlier. I mean, you've committed, I guess, to the employees to give them a raise if the revenues are increased. So where does that put us? That's not going to be, 6 months will be a year or a year and a half. It's not 6 months out.
Jim Kern,
Important to clarify that we have
can you
not.
speak closer? Jim, we can't hear you. Speak closer.
It's important to clarify that we're not committed. Important to
Jim,
clarify
you're coming in garbled.
Right. I'll do the best I can. If I can't, Amy can. Important to clarify that we have not committed to give raises to employees. We have committed to share where we are and to discuss possible approaches if things go considerably better than we anticipate.
Mike, did you hear that?
I heard it. Thank you.
Okay. Sven Reeson.
And Mike, I just want to make sure my point's heard, because I hear you on the engine. I do know many emails I got over the last few weeks talked as much about the building. So that's why I proposing this idea of, the 75,000 to shore up the building. And I guess I hear you at the crossroads. I hear you at the fork in the road, the two analogies you gave. But what I'm trying to do is to say, hey, we're committed. You're hearing that to try and help out now. And I really want to try and make sure that it's stressed the proposal, which would then have to go before the FTM, but the proposal to take 75, or we can come up with the right number, thousand at this moment is all in earnest to show our commitment. Now, we understand exactly what you said, or I understand exactly what you said about the engine and the risks with the fundraising. We get it. I also happen to like the idea, and I don't want to discuss it further tonight, of, whether it's warrants or bonds next year, so down the road. And if that's something we should entertain, then we should all talk about that. But I think to Ken's point, we are committed to working together and not having a fork in the road and not having a crossroads, but trying to figure out how to work this together. And that, I guess, is what my proposal is. If you don't like it, then just say so, please. But and we can just work on the truck and figure out how to deal with the truck. But these funds are available by flipping from infrastructure to capital, going to the FTM, and they're here. Versus, we're second in line, first in line, maybe, So I'm trying to come up with a way to work together and not have a fork and not have a cross, but at least try and run parallel for a little bit. And I hope you appreciate that.
No, I do. And when I was speaking about a fork in the road, what I was really talking about a long-range plan, something out 5-10 years, because eventually it will move to a paid department, partial pay, whatever it moves to. And the funding of all this equipment will clearly rest on the town's shoulders. So that's why I say down the road, it's not a going concern right now. We're going to be facing it shortly. But I'll let Chief Littlefield talk to you.
Well, Mike, but while you're switching over there, just a point of order is that the reason the funds were put into an infrastructure was because historically there's been some concern on the community's part that the council wasn't designating enough money for infrastructure. So when we did find ourselves in a position of an amount of money coming in, for instance, from Deepwater, we said, well, let's designate this for infrastructure. And as you know, we used some of it for the doctor's house renovation. We want to keep this money in this infrastructure fund to do the things that the town feels that we should be doing. Funding the fire department's trucks and things like that is another issue, and it's going to take some different funding. But the reason we did it to the infrastructure, designated infrastructure fund, was to cover some of the things that weren't getting done. We tried to come up with a way of doing that, of funding that. Kirk, go ahead.
I mean, I look at the bathrooms, which is more important, a fire truck or a bathroom?
We know what the answer is to that, Kirk. If the house is on fire, it's a fire truck, obviously. The bathrooms, the reason money was in there for the bathrooms, we sat at town meetings and people told us how badly we need the bathrooms.
Okay, but we have.
Martha, I'm
can
sorry.
I speak, please? Thanks. Okay, so we're basically, by the time we get to financial town meeting, we're halfway through the summer, and we're not doing bathrooms at Mansion this year. Is there anything down there? I don't go down there. Do we have any kind of facilities down there, like we did last year?
Have those funds been designated? Have those funds been designated for that purpose, Amy?
So I believe that there are porta-johns again at Mansion. I'm not 100% sure of that. And given that the fiscal year didn't start until July 1, the proposal was not to have those in place for this year. If construction were to be approved, it would be a project that would be implemented over the winter for next summer. But again, those are two different, I know people don't like to hear this. And I know the mean accounting terms, they're different piles of money. They are set aside for different purposes. You may not want to do bathrooms, and that's fine. That's a separate choice. But not using that money for bathrooms does not free it for the engine.
But it was, and this is what I was what I was asking the question that Mr. LaFaro asked, if it was by a vote of the, and I hate to go back and undo things. And I know in the past, the capital, when we first started, everything basically went to heck when we started doing capital budgeting, because the capital budget was the first thing that got raided when we needed to balance the budget. And I'm talking about back in the 90s. And this was a way of finally trying to get that back on track, as I understood it from somebody who's not involved in 2015. But that said, I know there's no flexibility with the vote that was taken, but if it was only a vote of the town council, and I don't use that term as loosely as it sounds, what is a capital? I always thought fire engine was a capital item because it was more than way over the capital threshold.
A fire engine, Ken, if I may, a fire
go ahead.
engine is a
Please.
capital item. A fire engine or a fire engine rehab is certainly a capital item. That is not necessarily the same as an infrastructure item.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, we're using words where, again, our statutes don't have, our ordinances do not have written definitions to go along with those. So you're getting back to intent. I think that's a pretty sticky place to be right now, making a decision on a meeting that's going to be held 6 days from now.
Yeah.
So.
Here's a question. How much is in the town's reserve right now?
After the estimated loss for fiscal year 20 and the proposed amount that we felt comfortable using for fiscal year 21, our reserves will be around 10%, just over 10% of our budgeted expenditures. The town's written policy for fund balance reserve levels require that we be at about 20%. So when I say that we are managing through a crisis, I take that pretty seriously. I would not recommend that this town use any more of their reserves.
Thank you, Amy.
Other questions or comments? Kirk, how are we doing over there?
That's that.
Any comments? Questions?
That's what you asked.
Ken, I got a question.
Hold on, come on in, Chris.
It's Chris Hovey.
Yeah, come on, sit down.
If we were to come before the voters at the financial town meeting and brought this forward for a vote, what's going to happen there?
Brought what forward specifically?
This $200,000, ask the taxpayers to pay it.
Would you be telling them where you're going to take it out of the budget?
No?
Okay.
But just ask them
Are we
what
at the cap?
our needs are, and stress how important it is, and let them make a decision and vote on it. Don't want to do that, but we're kind of like getting our backs on the wall here.
Any insight, anyone?
Are we at the tax cap right now?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
And you've used,
So we have to either take it from somewhere else or have an override.
We're not eligible for an override with these numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Karen.
what I would anticipate happening is a version of the conversation that just happened, where people would be asking how much reserves we have. And Amy would be representing both the town's stated objective and how far down from that objective we've come. And there'd be a discussion about sacrifices made and by other elements in the whole expenditure list we've talked about, both people, benefits, other capital projects, all of that would happen, because in order to fund this, you have to take it from one of those places that we've covered tonight. You have to take it from reserves, or you have to reduce the appropriation someplace else. So I haven't done financial town meeting in New Shoreham, but that's the conversation that goes on, and people need to recognize that you're either reducing something else, or you're talking about using reserves, or you're doing something that we're discussing tonight, which is using an available amount of money that was decided at the time. Amy points out, it's the purpose of a budget process. This has been an unusual one because of all of our circumstances, but that process to go through, we have some flexibility here with the infrastructure fund to support the building as Sven has suggested, two different elements of it, and another plan, potential plan to reimburse the fire company in fiscal year 22.
And Ken,
Sven,
if I can just add in, and Chris, I hear you, and Kirk and Mike, I mean, I hear you. We're all trying to work towards a similar end, and I understand the risks that Mike is concerned about, and the concerns about fundraising, or hey, will the town really come back and give us that money in the reimbursement? I mean, so I think we're trying, or at least I'm trying as hard as I can to come up with ways to help fund. It just doesn't quite meet the engine requirements because the way that infrastructure was set up. So I do go back to we're really trying to work together. It just sucks, I mean, to be frank. And my hope is that we can do the most we can with trust, and that you're hearing, I think, at least for me, an absolute commitment to doing everything we can for next year to reimburse those funds that you're going to have to put out now for the engine, so that you can get the building shored up, you can get the new building started to be designed, and you can get the truck done, because given the family, fire department's pretty close. So
I appreciate you. And the only thing I haven't heard tonight, and I'm a little surprised, and maybe I understand it even better now, that you haven't even brought up the thought of splitting this with us at all. So I think
I hadn't gotten there yet.
both sides, we got to think about this, and we'll get back with you. I'm done.
Chris, could you repeat what, giving up? I didn't hear it.
I said I came to a realization tonight that has not even been discussed. No one's has even brought it forward from the council to even split this with us tonight. So I think we got to.
We're talking about, we have to talk about funds that we can use, funds that we have available to use. And we've talked about having you guys front the cost of it and then writing it in, fitting it into the 22 budget to reimburse you as soon as we can. We sat through.
I get that and understand that, but what happens on the other end if we use this 200,000 and then all of a sudden I have a catastrophic problem on the other end that we're usually able to take care of, but we can't now. And then the town doesn't have any money, and then we're strung out. In what situation, I don't know, because I don't know if that's going to happen, but we have to be prepared for that and have that fund aside to protect ourselves.
I understand. That would be what you're talking about. Would be obviously a catastrophic situation, an emergency situation.
It could just be another 2,000 feet of 5-inch hose, or a bunch of hose that we lost in a fire, or some family member that we got to donate a bunch of money to. They something. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate you guys. Thank you. I don't think we're getting anywhere.
All right.
Does that mean you don't want to talk about the infrastructure fund and doing something about the fire barn?
No, we definitely do. I'm interested in redoing a new building and everything. I just didn't want to have that confused with the truck. You know, I think the truck is the main purpose here tonight, and the building is very important also.
I know it's not being confused, Chris. It's just a matter of we're trying to recognize what we discussed with you, the concerns you had. There's one way of doing it. There's one way of doing one thing, and there's another way of doing the other. And different ways of doing it because of the way the funds are set up.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
You ready to go?
Yeah,
Yeah, a question though I have, the chamber, are they paying rent
Yes, they
for the
are.
building use down at the ferry?
What?
The Chamber of Commerce, are they paying rent for the use of the building at the ferry?
I believe they are. Amy, are they not?
I believe they are. It's definitely programmed for next year, but Jim is the expert on the chamber discussions.
Well, are they currently paying, or have we abated the rent at all?
In the most recent year, their rent was cut in half. In the present year,
I'm sorry, Jim, I can't hear you.
in the most recent year, their rent was reduced by half. In the present year, the town has proposed presently to contribute 10,000 to support the chamber and charge them 10,000 for rent.
Well, I kind of think maybe a reappropriation of that use would help solve some of the problem. I mean, you know, it's,
See, that's the problem. That's the problem with trying to come up with the $200,000 at the financial town meeting, Mike. Is that if you're going to try nickel and diming it away from some of the other budgets, we've spent hours and
Right.
hours in sessions throughout the spring with the different departments, including the fire department, talking about what the budgets are and what the funding is going to be for each of those different entities. And they're not. There's not a lot of stuff there to cut out of any of these budgets. That's why we can't just pull it out of our pocket. Does anyone have any other input for right now? Any questions or comments?
I guess the only question that I would have is what, and if Chris is gone yet or not, the question about splitting the cost. I'm still on the engine, splitting the cost of the engine. And I know we don't have any place to take it out of, so we'd just be promising to repay the 100,000 next year instead of the 200, if that gets it moving ahead. And I know we can't promise.
Next year's gonna be.
We missed that, Kirk. What?
I said, you don't know, the problem is you don't know
I know.
what next year's gonna be. Could be worse than this year.
I know that- As Ken said, that we have a better idea now, though, of where we're going, which we didn't know going into last year. We had no idea this was going to happen.
Kirk, what you're saying is our problem too. You know, that's where.
Oh, I know.
where we are. So,
But if
And then people,
you manage the year that you do have, right? We've gotten this in every corner that we've spoken to. Next year could be worse. We know that, but we have to proceed with all of the best information that we have. It's an extraordinary set of circumstances, and set yourself up so that that hamstring you in the next year. And I think what Sven put together, given the circumstances for both, as Mr. LaFaro points out, with respect to what the likely impact on fundraising would be, and the town's revenues. In some ways, we're talking about the same kind of thing. We want to manage. We want to keep it in front of us as much as possible, right? As opposed to get ourselves into a situation where we don't have any options. And I know that's what you guys are trying to do too.
So, I just want to say this. So if we paid for the truck to be done, we put that in our operating budget for next year as a reimbursement from the town, and we don't get cut. That's commitment.
And what's the question?
Did you hear that?
We probably have to put that on the, oh, we can't put it on the warrant. The warrant's done.
Well, we're talking about the budget for fiscal year 22, which starts July 1st.
No, I understand that. I was thinking out loud. Never mind.
And it's going to go in the budget as a capital outlay, isn't that, Amy? If it were to do it that way?
It's
That's
not,
what we've been contemplating, but I think Kirk may be asking for something different. Which, do you want to rephrase that, Kirk?
a capital outlay is not a guarantee. Our operating budget is pretty much a guarantee. So if we put in a $200,000 reimbursement for the truck that we fixed with our donated money for the town, is that something? So instead of our budget being 180,000 this year, it would be 380,000 next year.
As a 1-year bump.
Amy, go ahead.
No, the distinction between the two isn't necessarily necessary or relevant in terms of how likely it is to stay in. I don't think it makes a difference which category it's in, whether you call it capital or operating. It is capital. That's what we would call it. I think that what's more important is the commitment on the part of the town, and I think what you're hearing from the council today, to push that as a priority, no matter whether it's operating or capital, to push that as a priority for the fiscal year 22 budget. And if I can just piggyback on Jim's looking forward view, we don't know what next year 22 is going to bring, but the visibility for the town to get from here to there is going to make a big difference. So our ability to reset at a lower level is pretty high. And I've said this to the employees as well when the town talked to them. The distance that it takes for us to regroup is important. So yes, 22 may be no different in terms of revenue than 21. We may still be operating at 50% of some of these seasonal items, but being able to have the time to make a new plan around that does make a huge difference. And so that's why I think long-term, I'm confident in the town's ability to work through this. And the difference between 21 and 22 or 20 and 21 is pretty big.
Ben Reason.
Amy or Jim Kern, I like keeping capital to capital. Is there a way, whether it's a commitment, or I don't know the right word for it, but a commitment of the council and the capital budget to make, from a capital point of view, this 200,000 number one priority, or some way to almost not quite gild it, but put it out there so that, to Amy's explanation a second ago, it's first in line or nothing comes after. Is there a way to do that or not?
Jim, go ahead.
Other than, as Amy says, I think it really is important to recognize that which slot you put it in doesn't represent a level of commitment. And the perception that, well, if it's in capital, it's more vulnerable. This is germane to the question that Sven asked, because you can't bind future town meetings. You can't bind future legislatures, because that's what town meeting is, to a particular action. So the extent to which you can have an impact on a future decision is just the strength with which you communicate that as the present elected officials that you are. So you can very much make a motion, you can make a commitment publicly at this town meeting, but you can also, as you have done, vote a resolution that says, given that the circumstances are as follows, and the commitment has been made by the fire department to do the following, it is important to us to communicate that this should be the priority. That's all in bounds. Technically, though, to answer your question, you cannot bind a future legislation.
So can I go?
Go ahead, Sven.
Oh, building on that, Kirk, and if Mike's still there, excuse me. If Mike's still there, excuse me. If Mike's still there, we could do a resolution, which to Jim's explanation is as far as one can go to putting it on paper, reinstating everything that's been said here. Would that help you in the confidence, Mike, and knowing that, at least I can say it, that I'm all in? Would that help?
I'm not doubting the word of the council. What I'm concerned of, we spend this money, we have no fallback. What happens when we need something? We need 1,000 feet of hose.
We're losing you, Mike.
Emergency funds, we're gonna tap those then, because that's the only way to do it. We cannot, the equipment breaks, we need to get it fixed. So I'm not, there's no doubt of the word of the council. But just be aware that if we need something, you're gonna have to come up with it real quick.
Andre, do you have your hand up? I can't tell.
No, I don't. I'm just listening, and I'm just listening. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm kind of in the dark.
I know. I can't go in the house.
Anybody else here have any questions?
No.
So Kirk, basically what we're trying to say to tonight is that I've heard what you said. We've heard what you said about the equipment. We know that it's going to take a long-term plan and things are going to have to change in terms of how the town and the fire department work together to provide the services and to provide the equipment for everybody and keep everybody safe. But right now, what we're saying is that we do have the ability to designate, and the town council could support, those of us who feel that way could support the designation of some funds towards the immediate problem of that front part of the building moving and the immediate problem of starting to plan for that upgrade of the facility, the entire facility. And that I think you heard that we want to do what we can going forward in the next fiscal year to go ahead and reimburse for what we're suggesting you use to do the truck that you're suggesting is so important to be done. And we can't write next year's budget sitting here tonight. We can't write next year's budget for fiscal year 22 at the financial town meeting for this year, but we can certainly express to you our commitment to get that done in whatever way we can. And that's the best we can do at this point. Chris, go ahead.
One last question. Maybe it's to Amy. If the town was to do a bond next year, and if we came to agreement and we fixed this truck with donations, and we did a bond next year to cover that in our aerial,
The ladder.
the ladder truck.
And the ambulance. And truck 4. And
Keep that on the community, on the communication.
Can't hear everything everybody's saying.
Did you hear me? Question?
I know, yeah, but I didn't know if you were done because someone else was speaking.
Yeah, that was it. I'm sorry, I had some chatter. But my question was, would it be something to look at if we were to do this truck ourselves? Don't know if we can. We got to talk about that. And the town does a bond next year for the reimbursement of that and the replacement of our ladder truck, which is coming on 30 years old.
Sure. I think if we all wanted to preserve the ability to do that, particularly to do a long-term financing of that immediate rehab, we should probably take an action at the council level, which is what we call a pre-funding resolution. This is really technical stuff, but it says that you can spend money today and be reimbursed by a bond later. It's an authorization of the council that allows that to happen. And as long as we have that in place, that can be something to consider if we did more of a long-term financing of multiple pieces of fire equipment.
And when
that
can we
answer your
start
question?
having that conversation?
What was the question, Chris?
When will we be able to step into that conversation a little more in depth?
That would be part of our discussion going forward between now and the beginning of the budget session, right, Amy?
Mhm.
Yes. Go ahead, Amy.
Did you say between now and the beginning of what?
The budget session, the next budget session?
We would actually do it before. I missed the beginning of your meeting today, but it sounded like there's a slot for repair already on the calendar.
Yes.
And so it's a technical type of thing that you would want to do before anyone laid out any cash relative to that engine rehab. So if that's in the fall, then we would want to start those conversations around that same time.
Okay, so we'll do that next month. Okay, all right.
Okay. I'm all
Very
set. I
helpful, thank you.
appreciate you guys' time and your effort. But unless anyone's got anything else for me, I'm out.
Great, Chris, don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. So Amy, just to make sure what I heard, because that is a little bit new. So if we as the council or this whole group here on Zoom, if we as the council wanted to make that commitment, should there be a bond or really looking at that large planning bond that Mike was commenting pieces of, we should do that in August, because I believe Chris said that the timing for the truck rehab is in September.
Correct.
So we would have to do that next month. Is that correct, Amy?
There's a little bit of flexibility in the timing, but August, September, yeah.
August, September. So I guess, Chris, the reason I really wanted to capture that is I think maybe that's what we have to discuss. We have a meeting coming, couple meetings in early August, and one on the 15th is a work session. And maybe you and Mike and Kirk and the whole group can think through, if we were to do a bond in a year from now, right? At that financial town meeting, let's sort of think about the scale and what engines or buildings or whatever it may be. And to Amy's point, if it would help to put that commitment in August, September, so that when if the bond gets passed, assuming the bond gets passed, then that would kick back in. Is that correct, Amy?
No, it's Martha. I've got a clarification. Amy, we don't have to have the whole amount, do we? Don't we? Can't we just commit to this 200,000 to get this rolling? Not commit, whatever the word term.
Right, exactly. What I really needed to do from a technical point of view is preserve the right to refund somebody out of a financing that is not yet approved. So it's definitely a cart before the horse thing. We've never done it that way before, but we'll make up some new rules to make sure we get all the pieces, even though they're not in a traditional sequence.
So I guess then Chris and Kirk and Mike, what I'm hearing is the 75 still stands as far as potential infrastructure to capital going to this financial town meeting. Then it would be everything Amy just described for the bonding that would occur in June 2021. And that could be a plan going forward if you guys, if it would help you to do the 75 now and that commitment to the bond in 2021 calendar.
75 to repair the building. Oh.
She said, no, that's not what Sven just said. He said it could be transferred
It has to.
into the capital. That's what he said.
Question, Chris? Kirk?
That the 75 he's talking about, that is for the infrastructure of the buildings, correct?
Yes, sir.
That would take a vote of the council and a vote of the people to change that, correct?
To go from infrastructure fund to capital, that would have to go before the FTM in 8 days, yes.
Go towards the truck.
And I believe you would have, I think you're gonna have unanimous support from the council, that we would be behind that. Amy?
Amy,
Hold on.
clarify that.
Point of order.
Go ahead, Martha.
No, it's Amy, point of order. Can we do that?
Sure. It does not require a vote of the council. It requires a vote of the voters. But presumably, as Sven said, the council would be supportive and would likely even facilitate the making of the motion. But it's the voters who would vote.
But that would be like under any other business.
It would be under the capital section of the operating and capital budget.
Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
And that
Jim
money
Kern-
goes towards the truck.
Jim Kern,
I was gonna let Kirk go.
go ahead, Kirk.
And I said that money that 75,000 will go towards the truck, correct?
No,
No.
that money, as we said, will be used for the shoring up of the front of the building and the beginning of and for an engineering study to come up with a plan for the building replacement.
Because the use of the word transfer from infrastructure to capital probably isn't the word we want to use. As Amy explained a while ago, it is an acceptable use of an infrastructure fund to use it for a capital item that involves brick and mortar. So as we present the capital budget, we line up the things that we are proposing to be spent and we identify the source. The source in this case is an infrastructure fund. The use is or maybe a conceptual plan and a certain amount of money to bolster the building. So it is a use of the infrastructure fund for a capital project.
And then Amy, could you just repeat, because I just want to make sure Kirk and Chris and like everybody gets it. The idea of the August, September meeting for the bond next year. Can you just repeat what you said just to make sure everybody's on the same page for the truck?
Sure. That's when we would engage in pretty rigorous discussions, I would suggest, about the long-term capital needs of the fire department and how the town would consider funding those over the next year or two. If that resulted in a recommendation to bring a bonding authorization to the voters at the next viable opportunity, then specific to the engine rehab, the council would authorize the reimbursement of the fire department out of those borrowed funds, the bonding fund, subject to the voters approving that bonding. I know it's hard to follow, so do I need to say it again differently? Okay.
No, we got it.
We understand it.
That's
And
something
those,
we need to work on with you guys, real.
I have
Do we lose them?
I have one other thing I want to bring up, has nothing to do with the fire trucks. We've been housing and all the communications and maintaining all the communications for everyone on the island, all the town entities. That needs to be turned over to the town and funded fully by the town.
Have to explain further, they might not understand.
Let them ask you a question first.
Could you explain that in more detail?
Right now, all the radio communications for the town are taken care of by the fire department at large. For the police department, for town road crew, for the power company, the water company, the sewer company, they all buy their own radios, but we maintain the equipment up here at free of charge. The person that's doing it does it for volunteering.
And there's no backup. Belongs in
Thank
the-
you.
I just want to add that that probably belongs in an IT department of the town, because it's sitting in the back of our barn here. And if the wall falls down, you're gonna lose all communications too. So it should be an IT department issue.
Okay, well, that's another issue. We're glad you brought up to us tonight. We'll certainly follow up on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Council, we have to stay together in order to do the vote for the financial town meeting, item. So don't go anywhere. Gotta find it. Give
Are
me
we
a
all
second.
set with the fire department?
I believe so. I believe so. Kirk, and do you have anything final you want to say, Kirk? No, you're
He
muted.
may be gone.
No, he's there. He's just muted. Unmute yourself, Kirk. There you go.
We're all
Right.
set now. We got what we needed. Thank you all
Thank-
for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is appointment of a special town constable pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 4516(8). Unless someone wants to finish up any comments or anything?
Can we just, there's been a lot of discussion tonight. Can we just wrap it up? Can we just summarize? We, as far as I heard that, I'm just trying to clarify. The fire guys are gonna fund their own fire truck repairs this year. We are going to discuss with them a possible bond to refund that in 2021, along with other infrastructure needs. We're going to continually meet with them, more so than we have in the past, just to get their needs. Am I missing anything else? I mean, the $75,000 with the infrastructure, that's not something that that money's there. So am I correct? I mean, is that a good summary of what's going to happen here? I just don't want to leave this meeting without knowing what the outcome of this. Amy?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right. Just speak clear.
But I guess I know, Andre, you said the 75 is sort of outside, but I think we discussed bringing that forward at the FTM and putting that before the voters, Amy, correct me, in the capital section, to move from infrastructure to capital to fund the two parts, shoring up and design, for the fire department. So I believe I think we at least discussed that, and I'm hoping that there's agreement to that, but maybe not.
No, I think all Andre meant was that that's a done thing on the side, and
Oh, yeah,
the
yes.
bigger picture is what we're talking about moving forward.
Right.
Yes.
The
Thank you.
75 is the money for the 75 is there. So, okay. Can we?
thank-
Thank you, Sven.
Amy, go ahead. Amy.
Yeah, I know you're all considering it done, but there is a slight difference between whether you expect someone from the floor, like the fire department, to make that motion, or whether we collectively, as the town, are going to propose it from the table. So I guess I'm looking for some direction from the council as to whether you would like me to proactively start that discussion or just wait for somebody else to raise it.
I'm in the proactive camp.
Proactive.
I think given your understanding of how we feel about it, it would be good if you could be proactive, we be proactive about it and not leave it to, yes.
Martha, do you-
Yes.
thank you, Amy. I know you needed one more thing on your plate before next Monday.
That's okay. That's the kind of thing that if the council, even if you took a quick vote, we could actually include that as another piece in people's packet. Whether we did or we didn't, again, having it come from the table is a very different message. So knowing that that the council wants to put it forward.
We can't take a vote on it tonight.
Okay.
We
Then
have-
I'm just going to go forth and reflect the conversations that have been had.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Anything else, anyone on that? Next item on the
I think we need
agenda
to
is,
buy Amy a big,
go ahead, Andre.
I think we need to buy Amy a bigger plate. It's a lot,
Next.
there's a lot on that. There's a lot on it. Thank you, Amy. Much appreciated.
Next item on the agenda is the appointment of a special town constable pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 4516-8 for the July 27th, 2020 financial town meeting. Molly, are you with us still? You have a brief explanation? Can you explain this?
Sure, that's the general law that speaks to, I'll back up. As you know, our plan for financial town meeting is to have the meeting in the gym. We're also going to have the option of an outdoor space if it doesn't rain, or overflow space in the cafeteria. If we use either one of those options, we're going to need to have somebody to keep track of the voters out there. So we're going to need an additional team similar to the one that we normally have in the background in the main room. We'll have a member of the Board of Canvassers. We'll have the assistant town moderator, and we need someone to take the role that Tom Durden normally takes as town sergeant. And Rhode Island general law provides for you the ability to appoint someone for up to a year, but it can be just for one day, to act as a special town constable. And they'll have basically the powers of the election police.
And you've reached out to someone?
I have. I've reached out to Mike Shea, who's been town sergeant in the past. And Mike's, of course, attended innumerable town meetings and knows the drill very, very well. And he's agreed to serve if you'd like to have him.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mike Shea as a special town constable for the financial town meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Sven. Discussion. All those in favor, Andre? Can't hear you. No. Okay. Andre votes in the affirmative. Sven?
Aye, sorry.
Aye.
Okay. Martha?
Aye.
I vote in the affirmative. Motion carries. Chris, is Chris still with us? Chris isn't with us, is he?
He left.
Okay. All right.
Good job.
Motion carries 4 to nothing with one absentee. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Martha. Thank you. All those in favor, Andre? Sven?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
I vote in the affirmative. Andre, you with us? You vote in the affirmative? Okay. he votes
Yeah,
in
I'm
the-
with us. I keep getting kicked out. Yeah, I'm with you. I just want to, just if anybody's following, as you've seen our internet issues, please show up on July 27th and vote for broadband if you don't want to have any more meetings like this.
Good point. That being said, motion has been taken and is voted in the affirmative. We are adjourned. Thank you all for being here tonight, and we'll see you. Take care, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ben, Martha, Molly.
Good
Amy.
night.
You're welcome.
Good
Hey,
night, John
please,
Boy.
can you guys please swing by and sign the resolution that's at Town Hall? In the morning, maybe?
In the morning. Perfect. Thank you.
Super. Thanks very much.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
Thanks for everything.